Christmas of 2019 was the year me and my two best friends, Mark and Tyler, decided to rent a cabin instead of doing the usual family stuff. We were all in our early 20s, living far from our families, all kind of burnt out from work, and honestly the idea of lying around for a few days doing absolutely nothing sounded perfect. The cabin we found was about an hour outside of town, tucked halfway in the woods, but still technically in a neighborhood, if 10 other cabins spaced a mile apart counts as one. We got there on Christmas Eve, bringing tons of food, snacks, and beer, and Mark even brought over his Xbox. So we drank and played video games until 2 in the morning. It wasn't exactly a Hallmark holiday, but it was definitely fun. By the time we all went to our rooms to go to bed, I passed out almost immediately. The place was freezing, and the cabin creaked like every other old wooden building, but I was tired enough that none of it mattered, at least until I woke up. It was probably 3 or 4 in the morning, still pitch black outside. I didn't know what time it was exactly, but I knew I'd been asleep for a while, and that something woke me up. Soft, slow footsteps from the main living area. Not walking normally, more like someone taking careful steps, trying not to wake anyone. I blinked a few times, half asleep, and figured it had to be one of the guys, maybe getting water or using the bathroom. I laid there listening, waiting for the footsteps to go down the hall or to the bathroom door. But the sound just stayed in the same area, the creaking boards near the front of the cabin, almost pacing. I wanted to call out and ask if everything was okay, but I didn't feel like yelling from a dark room or going out there and startling them. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. The cabin settled back into silence. I rolled over and fell asleep again. When I finally got up in the morning, sunlight was coming in through the big living room windows, and the guys were already in the living room. First thing I did was jokingly ask who was creeping around at 4 in the morning. I expected some stupid answer from one of them about losing their phone while drunk or something. I don't know. But both of them gave me the exact same confused look. Mark said, "Dude, we all went to bed at 2. And Tyler shook his head, saying he didn't get up once. I laughed it off at first. I figured maybe I'd imagined it, or dreamed the sound and mistaken it as real. But then I glanced over toward the front door. The lock was undone. Not just the deadbolt, the handle lock too, fully unlocked. The door was still shut, but the locks weren't turned. I asked if either of them had gone outside this morning. They both said no, and when I pointed out the door, I saw both of their faces fall flat, as we all kind of realized I might have actually heard someone last night. I mean, we were all fairly sure that we had locked the door. But after a minute of thinking about it, Tyler said maybe the wind shook it loose, or maybe the old door just didn't latch right. You know, the usual excuses people make when they don't want to consider anything else. I think it was because all of us wanted to believe that it was nothing, that we eventually just let it go. We ate breakfast, bundled up in our winter coats because it was still absolutely freezing in the cabin, and spent the afternoon hanging around, playing video games, watching movies, and just having a good time. We also handed out small crappy gifts we'd gotten each other for Christmas, and spent some time FaceTiming our families. It was snowing too much, and way too cold to spend any time outside, even though we all had wanted to go hiking while we were up at the cabin. Over the course of the day, the whole creaking and unlocked door incident faded into just an odd mystery. But as it got later, I guess I started to get a weird gut feeling. We were all in the living room, playing some dumb party game on the Xbox, laughing and yelling at each other. and every so often I'd catch myself glancing toward the window. I hadn't noticed it much before, but now the blackness outside felt too close. Like someone standing just a few feet back could watch us clearly, while we'd never see them. I knew during the day there were some trees just outside of that window, like literally 10 feet away, and yet it was too dark to even see that. I didn't want to mention the bad feeling I had because I didn't want to kill the mood, especially when I really didn't have a reason to feel the way I did. I never actually saw anything. Because we had stayed up so late last night, we only stayed up until around 12 a.m. when Mark decided to head to bed early. Me and Tyler stayed in the living room for another 30 minutes chatting before both also going to bed. I laid in bed awake for a while. Hard to tell the time just sitting there, but it felt like an hour-ish. There were no curtains or blinds, so the window next to my bed made me feel really uneasy. And then I heard it again. The soft, quiet footsteps at the front of the cabin in the living room. I sat up and listened as intently as I could. I knew this time that it wasn't one of my friends, because I would have heard them leave their rooms and walk down the hallway. So really, I was just listening to see if it was just the house creaking, or if it was actually a person. And after a while of listening, I was absolutely sure that what I was hearing were footsteps. And with whoever it was just pacing around the room, I finally decided to get up and maybe try confronting them. But as I walked over to the bedroom door, suddenly the footsteps moved from the living room to the hallway. They got closer and closer, walking all the way down, passing by my door, and going toward what I think was Mark's room. And then it was quiet. I didn't hear anything for several long seconds. I very quietly grabbed the door handle and pushed my door open just slightly enough to peek out into the hallway, not making a sound. I saw a large man, like maybe 6'5" or taller, with long hair and a thick beard. He was standing still, facing Mark's bedroom door, and just standing there motionless in the dark. I didn't risk looking for too long and moved away, but left the door cracked open still because I didn't want it to make a click sound if I closed it. And at this point, I didn't know what to do. I froze up, unsure how to get us out of this situation. But just 20 seconds later, I heard a slight creak in the hallway, and before I could even react, my door was suddenly pushed open. The man stood in the doorway, staring at me with wide open eyes and an emotionless face. I yelled at the top of my lungs, and the dude didn't even flinch. Before I knew it, Mark and Tyler came running out of their rooms, and I couldn't see much, but Tyler immediately saw the guy and tried to stop him. But this dude was huge, and basically just slammed Tyler against the wall and threw him to the floor. And Mark was probably just frozen still after seeing that. But then the guy ran off, didn't try fighting all of us. He just took off out of the cabin and, from what we could tell, into the forest. We quickly locked up the place and called the police. It took over 20 minutes, and the whole time we were anticipating the man coming back. All of us were holding whatever temporary weapons we could find, like kitchen knives and the iron fireplace rod. But he didn't come back. Really, we got no answers, and most of the situation fell onto the owner of the cabin, as he was the one who had his cabin broken into. What that man wanted from us or from the cabin, we don't know. From our few theories though, the one that stands out to me is that he might have been there looking for the owner and not knowing it was a rental. It would explain him staring at me and seeing all of us and not really bothering with doing anything afterward. But again, it really is just a theory. He just as likely could have been there to harm us and just saw it was 3 people and decided to run. Whatever the case, we're all just glad it didn't come down to an all-out fight, because I genuinely don't know who would have won in the end.